The Madness Tech community connects tech enthusiasts in the field of data, front-end, product and cloud native. Twice a week, on Mondays and Wednesdays, you can find new talks and interviews from the community on this channel. Subscribe now and feel free to join our community and meetups. Events and groups are listed below, and now follow us into the rabbit hole.
First of all, thanks for the invitation to Lara to give the chance to share my experience and especially this topic around design-driven companies. Hopefully nothing will happen to the technological setup because it's very hot. I'm living down in South Germany. We have 33 degrees. I don't know how your weather's up there, but it's really hot, and my Mac is currently working a lot. So, coming to the talk, design-driven companies dominate today's business world, and why you might lose the catch-up race. It sounds like a very bold statement, and I do agree it is, but we are living in a time where design is becoming even more such an integral part to our daily businesses, especially in the business context. And since the digitalization of almost every business, the demand rises even more. So a quick introduction to myself. My name is Dominic Gantz. I'm a strategic design consultant and product designer. I do consulting and strategic design for businesses, mostly focused on startups and small businesses as they are usually in the progression of growth, but also big businesses. I do also product design coaching, so individual coaching for product designers, share my expertise and my experiences. And I'm also a product designer at SAP with 15 years experience in design in general and 10 years experience in software in general. So, first of all, we should discuss what design-driven actually means. So, I like to take this quote from John Spacey, who wrote that on an article on simplicable.com, which he says or refers to design-driven as design-driven is an approach to business that views everything as design. Well, you might think now, okay, maybe I don't even know even more about design-driven now from that statement, but in a nutshell, you have to see design-driven as a value driver to businesses. So usually you have a business where you define your strategy, your constraints, and your company goals. And then you have design, which is some sort of an enabler and for the execution part of that, where you provide functionalities, processes, and even ecosystems that ultimately will hopefully generate some value either to your customers or internally in your business unit to serve products, services, and experience in general. So speaking about design, why design-driven anyway, and why should you care? Well, according to McKinsey wrote in a report in October 2018, which says the best design performers increase their revenue and shareholder returns at nearly twice the rate of their industry counterparts. Speaking in numbers, that means 32%, roughly 32% higher revenue and 56% higher total share returns. So that is a significant amount of untapped business opportunities. So in addition, due to digitalization, businesses have to serve a customer base that will span across 5 generations by 2030. So meaning of that, what I said in the beginning, since everything becomes digital, the touch points, and even though digital products and technology is more and more becoming accessible for a broad audience, we are now in a very critical phase where many of our customers might span across 5 generations, since everybody walks around with a cell phone. Of course, there's some limitations according to, let's say, to minors and children. They may not be allowed due to regional or country-specific regulations that they can purchase something. But if you think about it and you walk outside, you see a lot of people with digital products, either in their hands or maybe at home. And with the current situation, it's even being accelerated even more. But the main question is, how do you know if your business is actually design driven? So there is something out there which is nothing new. It actually came already from around the 1990s, I do believe. And you may heard of it in different types of terminologies or different titles. I refer it basically as design maturity. When you look around on the web and you do your research, you may encounter something like design maturity model, UX design maturity model. So there are many different flavors of the same core principles, but design maturity is a very critical part in sense of an organizational setup and how the organization and the business is actually utilizing design to really drive additional value to your customers and also drive business success. So actually, the design maturity is a level of how design is actually strategically applied within an organization. So the question is, why design maturity and what problem does it actually solve? Well, first you have to understand that most companies do not fully understand the value of design in general as a key business driver and how it actually impacts their business outcome. So referring back to the statement from the McKinsey report, if we speak in monetary terms, it's a significant amount where design has an influence and impact on the business in general. So coming to the design maturity and the terminology and what is actually behind the design maturity, let's first focus only on the part of design. So design is not design. So you might be like very confused right now. What do I mean, or what does he mean with design is not design? Well, if you think about design, you usually think about all these things you see now, something like design tools, Sketch, Adobe, Figma. You might think, if you're in the digital space, user interfaces. Maybe you think it's about something artistic, visual, layouts, typography, and so on and so forth. So I do believe you get the hang of it where I'm leading with that. But on the other hand side, where I usually speak about design is more like something of strategy, collaboration, innovation, creativity, development, vision, research, diversity, processes, problem solving, so on and so forth. So if you look at both of these things, the terminology design in the first place describes something where different people have different opinions on that. But there are two sides to the story, right? So I would say design on the one hand side is mostly referring in the product context, since we are speaking now at the product madness, is usually associated with a craft or a skill set, mostly referring to a dedicated designer. On the other hand side, I see design more like a mindset and a culture. It's not about my own opinion, but it's rather than you have both sides to the same coin. So the way I would like to phrase it, if somebody asks me what design is design is a conscious or subconscious thought process that to come out with a solution to solve a specific problem. So that is now a very generic terminology or a very generic explanation to it. But if you think about it, it actually makes sense, because no matter what role you have in your organization, if you're a developer, if you're a manager, you some point in time encounter a problem that you have to solve, and you think about things, how to solve that problem. And that particular process may happen consciously or maybe subconsciously. That is what I personally refer to design. So that's for the demystification of the terminology design. So now, what is actually design maturity? So design maturity is a scale and indication on how much design is being considered as valuable to a business and how much design as a cultural mindset is an integral part of strategic business decisions. So there are two main perspectives when you look at the design maturity. The first one is the levels in the scale itself and its implications to it. Secondly, the awareness of design within an organization and its stake on business decisions. So if you think about design maturity, something like this illustration, you have a bottom level, which I refer as level 0, because that actually means there's no design at all in an organization. You have level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all the way up. So I would like to go now for a portion of that scale into detail, what that actually means, and what are the implications of that, and especially what is the business impact of this. So these levels, they are described as a lack of design awareness, which is the bottom, ad hoc design, project design, business design, strategic and integrated design, and holistic design culture. So when we start at the base, a lack of design awareness actually means that the topic of design is not coming up at all, and the products and services are mostly shaped and designed by internal stakeholders only. So please remember, when I'm referring to design, I'm not speaking about the craft, working with tools, sketching. I'm referring to the problem-solving process. There are very specific attributes that come with this particular level. The one is products and services are the main focus and mostly highly feature-driven. Usually convinced that internally made product and service decisions are reflecting their customer needs. And design decisions are mostly made on executive level following a top-bottom hierarchical decision flow. So the problem in that particular area is organizations located at that level have not recognized anything, and there's a lacking of usability in the products, and the impact is pretty darn obvious. You have low customer satisfaction, you have high user churn, you have low retention rates, and that ultimately leads to no customer loyalty. If we look at the organization perspective, from the awareness point of view, design is far out the organization. Maybe it's not even considered at all. But speaking of level 1, hopefully I don't have any backgrounds where what your role is, but hopefully you're not on level 0. If you do, then you should probably speak to your managers and hire a designer. But level 1 ad hoc design is the topic of design is actually coming up and is as recognized as a necessity. However, products and services are being produced often inconsistently and are still mostly based on internally made assumptions. So the three major attributes of that level are mostly only acknowledgement of design for the aesthetic part and how a product should look like. Dedicated designer or design team actively contributing by serving with typical artifacts and deliverables, which are common to design, and acknowledgement of the skill set of designing for improving the perceived product quality. So designing in that sense is really referring to the skill and the craft. And what's really important, there was another report made by Envision, which is a prototyping platform. If you're not familiar with that, they created a huge report on that whole maturity topic. And they investigated that actually 41% of all companies they interviewed are actually stuck on that level. And we're not speaking about startups, we're speaking about big businesses as well, even though well-known brands as to also. So ad hoc design is basically all about effectiveness, right? So you have something, you have to, maybe you have a dedicated designer, maybe you have somebody who has a design affinity, and you try to get things done which is associated to the design craft. So the problem of ad hoc design is only seen as a professional skill set, meaning the craft and the skill set. And usually there's a significant imbalance of a design to any ratio. What do I mean with design to any ratio? So if you are in a company where you build software products, then it's the design to developer ratio. If you in a different industry, then it's a design to something else ratio. The other problem is that it's highly ad hoc based without any design considerations in the beginning. I'm sorry, my light just turned off. Designers is seen as a generalist for everything visual. That is the most problem I see in businesses, that they have a dedicated designer or maybe a small team of designers, and these designers are responsible for everything that's visual. Should it be social media ads, the product itself, I don't know, banners, you name it, everything that needs to be some sort of visually conceptualized. And the impact on the business is still remaining low customer satisfaction, because these designers usually have to serve so many different needs and so many different demands within the organization. So they have a lack of focus on the real problems they want to solve for the customers. There is a medium churn rate. Still, there might be a there might be a low retention rate. And most important, it's an inefficient utilization of design expertise. Like I said, they're usually being pushed around and delegated to different tasks, everything visual, which is not the ideal scenario. From a maturity level landscape, there are in every scale or in every level, there are three main focus areas that are being addressed to overcome this particular situation and maybe move to the next level. The first one is all about collaboration. So in this particular level, there's mostly an on-demand collaboration. So it's more like we need something quickly. Design decisions are mostly made by managers and executives still. So if you have a leadership established and the designer provides something, his ideas or her ideas, and usually it's been heavily manipulated and influenced by managers and executive level. The practice usually is focused only on stuff like wireframes, mock-ups, prototypes, you name it, all these visual artifacts. And the people perspective, sometimes there are designers, but most of the time they're not really experienced designers or non-designers taking over design activities. And that's also a very huge problem, because there's a lack of knowledge in this area. From an organization perspective, there is this little blob called design, which is part of the organization, but it's somewhat a small, let's say, niche area within the organization. The next level is the so-called project-based design or project design. So the topic of design becomes an entrenched aspect of product development and delivery, and the awareness for design leads to a dedicated budget and design roles allocated to specific projects on demand. So there is still this allocation on demand, but there is maybe a dedicated budget. I'm sorry, that light keeps on turning off. I hope it's still working. But at least there's some investment in design in general. So the main attributes is that design is increasingly seen as a strategic advantage. Design team or a designer with dedicated budget and subdomain experts that focus on and support on different aspects of the design process. So speaking of subdomain experts, I'm referring to something like not the generalist designer who does interaction design, information architecture, user research, you name it. You maybe start hiring or nominating specific people within your organization to take over a specific task, because the whole design space, especially when we speak about the craft and UX design, it's a very broad terminology. I know there's many times referred to UX/UI, but UI is only a small part of the whole UX topic, and it's not only the responsibility for a designer, it should be the responsibility for the whole company. This is where this whole design-driven topic is actually going to. And also there are some first formal design processes that are being established, maybe some best practices, because you get some experience in what you're doing within your organization, and you start to adapt some of workflows and etc. So at this level, it's all about growth, right? So you really start to find people that can take over specific design tasks to really drive the product quality more up. So we are still on the product level on this particular level. I'm sorry, there's a typo. That should not be level 1 ad hoc design, should be level 2. But still, there are some problems. Dedicated design budget has to be spent very wisely due to the mandatory investments along the product delivery pipeline. So if there's a dedicated budget, you really have to think about where to invest it. If it's a nitty-bitty feature, should you invest heavy user research and testing? Is it a key functionality? Then you should invest. So these are the trade-offs you have to make. Usually there's a still high imbalance of design to any ratio, so that is still a problem. And the business impact is that now it starts to really drive higher customer satisfaction because there are more brains contributing from a design perspective to make the product better or the service better. But the downside is that they might slow down the product delivery in general because there's a lot of design work that has to be scheduled as well, that has to be planned, and sometimes it takes a bit time to really find your insights and make proper decisions and stuff like that. And designers also, or design process also have iterations that are being applied. And the other problem is lack of scalability and agility, which is, I do believe, a no-brainer if you think about what the traits are for this particular level. From the landscape perspective, the collaboration is mostly still on demand. However, design teams are now actively contributing to products and services. So they're not being pulled in, we need something quick here. They actually have a mandate for a particular product or an area of a product or an area of an ecosystem, you name it. And the practice is now shifting more away from this general wireframe type of thing and concept and UI. It's going more in user research, concepts, and testing. So now we are moving from just creating solutions or output, so just deliverables. Now we're moving to a direction where we actually focus on the problem and try to understand what the problem actually is so we can come up with better solutions. From the people perspective, usually on that level, there are still self-managed teams, increasingly dedicated roles for design-specific activities, like I mentioned, user research, interaction design, you name it. From an organizational point of view, the topic of design becomes an entrenched part, and now there is more visibility within the organization. It's still some sort of a small visibility, but it starts to grow. So I don't want to go through all these levels because most of the companies, even though enterprise companies, they are stuck somewhere between level 0 and 1 and maybe level 2. So they're moving somehow there. But the question is the next level called business design, where you actually have to be. And from my perspective, that level is the foundation. As you remember what I said, we are living in a time where we have to serve in the future a lot of people with different needs and different traits and from different generations. And if you still on the bottom levels and you start, just doing functional design where you're just delivering stuff where you actually on demand, and you still are more focused and spending your time and money on doing things rather than finding new solutions and understanding the problem, that is when you really have a big problem in the future. So the business design aspect is actually the part where design is being shifted into the center. I'm not saying it's something special. There's no dedicated design team that is now, on the ivory tower or something, but it has to have an intersection with all these different business aspects, right? So in order to do that, you need some sort of things you have to establish within your organization. So there are common things that are being considered as a mandatory part of this particular level, which is standardization. So you have to start standardizing. Maybe you already have something like a design system. And if I speak about design system, I'm not referring to something like a style guide where you have font sizes and colors. That is part of it. But a really robust and future-proof design system, you really have components. You have design components which are consistent And attached to those components, you have the underlying code, which developer and design collaboration is being as efficient as possible. And maybe you also establish some processes like quality processes. So you have to have some check and balances before you actually ship a design. And what's really important at this level, you actually have to start quality and success measurement. So you have to start measuring the impact of design and the design decisions, and something NPS. You have to investigate the user flow behavior. Then you have to pinpoint and go into detail. So that if you start doing that right now, it's good. But if you're still on the lower level, you might focus on the wrong thing at the wrong time. So first, you need to shift to the level 3, and then you can start playing around with these other things. Design operations, it's a whole nother topic. It's a big topic. It maybe take up 2 or 3 talks. It's more like using design as a business within a business. Executive and board level investment, that's when it comes, right? So if design is shifting in the center, then you get the investment. And of course, innovation. So everything like designing the craft, it's done, it's standardized. So since now you don't have to focus so much on the craft rather than on the problem solving, that is when the treasure is being seen, that you may now start finding innovative ideas. So the ultimate goal on this design maturity model is something like this: holistic design. This is referring to that not design is now the organization itself, but everybody follows the design culture. It's not about the craft. Think about at the beginning, we had the craft part, we had the mindset and culture part. So the mindset and culture part is more focused on design thinking, not the process or the methodology. This is just teaching you how to use design typical thought patterns, because designers are experts in solving problems, but it's not exclusively learnable by them. Everybody can do that. And it has to become second nature, and it has to be part of the DNA, right? So if you think about very famous brands, I like to take the fruit company. We all experience, you might like their products, maybe not, but you have to acknowledge something is working great. They have a consistent ecosystem. You maybe take something else like Netflix or something else, right? So if you watch something on your phone and while you're driving home and you want to finish your series, you start the TV and it instantly resumes at the point where you left off. So this is all about experience, which is enabled by technology. So speaking of that, I think the time is up now. Thank you very much. And try to become design driven as well. It's a journey. It might take some time. It might take some long time. But the steps are worthy. And if you would like to give me any feedback on this talk, or maybe have any questions, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. We can connect, or just drop me an email. If you have specific questions. I will also work on a self-assessment. So if you drop me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn, just make sure that writing in your message that you came from the Product Madness talk. Then as soon as that self-service assessment is ready, I can share it out with you. It's totally free, so you can maybe do a quick run and see, get a first impression and indication where you might be on the design level, to actually get the awareness, because that's the most important part, right? So you have to have first awareness before you actually can start fixing things. So from my side, that will be it. Maybe if there are any questions, reactions, comments, concerns, critique, I'm open to everything.